Boss Matty just came in, and he goes, the station put out a tweet about what we were just talking about. It's been out there all afternoon after all this discussion on ESPN.
And what was the exact tweet? Like Bradley Beal for
it's
Klay?
about trading Klay Thompson. Here, I could pull up the exact question that's on the 95.7 The Game Twitter feed, because I saw this earlier today, and he's not wrong. Should the Warriors consider trading Klay Thompson for Bradley Beal? And then there's an Odyssey.com story about Steiny and Giddings. Goo is off today. And the discussion that they had earlier with regard to this idea. There are currently 246 comments below this tweet.
It's a lot of comments.
246. It's got almost 90,000 impressions, and it's only been up there for a couple of hours. Okay? 246 comments. Boss Matty says, out of those 246 comments, probably at least 200 of them are like, hey, middle finger to all of you for even asking this question, jerks. Then they walk out of the room. That's it. That's essentially been most of the responses. So we're just sitting here having a conversation.
He is beloved.
He is beloved. You talking about Boss Matty or Klay Thompson?
I'm talking about Klay Thompson.
Oh, Klay Thompson. He's very beloved.
He's beloved.
Dearly beloved. So we're sitting here having a conversation because, Matty, we get it. Matty didn't grow up here. You and I grew up here. He's certainly tied in with everything now. He's been here for the better part of Klay's career. But his question was, he's like, what is it about Klay?
I know what it is.
What is it specifically about Klay Thompson that makes everybody so uncomfortable to where they want to wrap their arms around him like he's their child and go, the idea that any of you would want to trade him or ask him to come off the bench or ask him to take a pay cut or even look at him funny, like it's offensive to a lot of Warrior fans. I had an answer that he kind of debunked. What's yours?
Well, I think I've seen it before. It is the same way that the 49er fans responded in the 90s to Goodbye Joe. Even though Steve Young was the MVP of the league, Joe was one of their favorite players on the original team. The Niners were bad. I mean, it doesn't matter that the Warriors won in 75. You have to be 60 years old to remember it. So it's really that's like a championship that never happened in some ways. The Warriors, in most Warrior fans' lives, have been bad and were bad all the way through. And then they finally got great. And it was Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. And so they love those guys. And you can't make any kind of a reasonable discussion about and using facts and coldness. There's a warmth to their belief of nobody liked Joe going to Kansas City. And it didn't matter that Steve Young may have been better than Joe at that time, or that definitely had more legs as far as a longer career arc in the future. It didn't matter. That's a reasonable deal. This was an emotional tie they had to Joe, and nobody liked the Niners for moving on from Joe Montana. And I see Klay Thompson the exact same way. He is, in many ways, their most favorite player on the original team. The Warriors weren't. This isn't the original team, but as for a lot of Warrior fans, this is the original championship team, and they love this era. It's the greatest era in the history of the franchise, and it doesn't matter about any kind of an intellectual debate or a reasonable debate on what Klay is going to provide to the team in the future. It's like, I love Klay, and I want him to stay. I love Joe, and I want Joe to stay. It's not about make sense or reason or facts. It's all about an emotional attachment.
The comparison is an interesting one because Joe Montana walked out of here as the greatest quarterback of all time and the most important position at the helm of repeated championships. Klay Thompson is not even the best player on his own team. He's not the favorite player on his own team. Like, that's unequivocal.
But he's a beloved guy who reads the CC Times that everybody – it's all about relatability, too.
He absolutely has the Bay vibe down pat. He's just, like, out there, like,
got his boat.
Got a dog and a boat. Love the ocean.
Rocco.
Right? I'm just, like, aloof, different. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And so he's beloved. I get it. My answer was, though, I wonder – if a lot of Warrior fans, and I will admit to sort of being one of these, who look at Steph, Klay, and Draymond as one human being. That's one person. That three-headed monster is a statue. It is the big three. It is the best thing that we have ever known in Warrior basketball by leaps and bounds. It is arguably the best thing we have ever known in Bay Area sports. Arguable. And so to take any one, you're not replacing one of the Beatles with somebody named Bill. You're not doing that. And that's what I think. Now, he pushed back when I made that point, Boss Matty did, because he said, well, except for half the fans want Draymond gone. Okay, fair point.
Draymond's more polarizing.
Absolutely.
Draymond's been more... has had more high-profile situations where people pick sides.
No doubt. And I'm open to maybe it just being a Splash Brother thing where it's like, my gosh, you cannot break that up. You just can't. And I would say I may be just short of the you can't do that crowd. But I'm close. If you're going to trade Klay Thompson, my God, it better be perfect. It better be so freaking explainable, and it better work right away. It better absolutely be so evident that it was such the right business and basketball move. Because if you take that from us and it doesn't work, it's just not acceptable.
What do you think of this as a comparison? Because people on the text line are like, Steph is Joe. Then is Klay DC? Is he Dwight Clark? The side, the sidekick to Joe that was.
There's an interesting comp there.
And Dwight was. Everybody loved Dwight. I don't know that I've ever met anybody that didn't like Dwight. Dwight might be one of the most popular 49ers of all time, and also his connection to Joe. And that era, it was like people did not like the end of the Dwight Clark run with the Niners. To the point the Niners brought him back and put him in the front office.
People still don't like the way things ended with Joe. Dwight ended up going, the story. Dwight had to go to his house one night as an executive with the 49ers, tried to kind of talk to Joe. It actually
from the documentary?
Put a wrench in their friendship for a little while that they got through. But Joe Montana sits there still today. He's still mad. It is very, very obvious, whether he admits it or not. He is still very mad at the 49er organization, even though there's not one human being left from everything that went down in the early 90s. There's nobody left, but he is still upset at the way it all played out. And maybe that's what people are worried about. And I'll admit, I worry about that. Like, this has been so amazing. This has been so perfect. The idea that someday Steph, Klay, or Draymond would feel some kind of way toward the Warrior organization, gosh, that would hurt. That would really hurt.
I'll give you an example. I was talking to some Warrior fans the other day, and they were talking about the idea of moving Klay Thompson and looking at that salary. And Klay's making, $40 million this year, $43.2 next year. And the name that got brought up, because I said, well, I can't imagine they would move Klay Thompson just to anywhere. It would have to probably be somewhere that's like either like at L.A. or New York, someplace big. And somebody threw out, would you trade him for Anthony Davis? And, it's like, you know what? I don't think the Lakers would make that trade.
Yeah, why would the Lakers do that?
Right. But, that's what I'm saying as far as even in that scenario where you're getting a younger, more valuable player who, I think most people would claim Warriors would win that trade, there would still be a lot of unhappy people with that trade. So, like, I agree if you did move Klay, you got to win the deal. Otherwise, it's going to be received very poorly by the fan base. Even if you wind up getting a player that's younger and comparable, it's still like their first love. I mean, it's tied to the Warrior run. I think there's an awful lot of people too that really don't want to. They'll know that it's kind of the end of an era, and they love that era. And it's when they became Warrior fans, and they don't want to see it end. And then there's the other side of it, going, well, we want to win titles. Do you feel like you can win titles with Steph and Klay and Draymond all back on the roster?
I do.
I wonder if Joe does.
I do. I do. I don't know who the people are all around them. I think Andrew Wiggins is one of them, but I do. I told you a few minutes ago, of all the different, and this is typical NBA offseason, this is how late June and early July go, which is this is every single rumor, every single scenario, and you play with it in their head. And so everybody today, Bradley Beal, does that fit? Okay, how do you fit Bradley Beal whenever a good player is available? I am very focused. Like, of all the ideas I hear, the one that makes me go, okay, I'm intrigued right there, are all the things surrounding the Toronto Raptors. I think the Raptors might be rebooting some things in a certain way. I think that young players on the up and coming would be interesting to them. That makes Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga interesting names. And I think OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam are very, very interesting names. And I think that their potential addition to the Warriors would be a very, very good thing. I don't know how any particular deal would work. I don't know which one of them or both are they interested in moving on from. But those, if you ask me right now, what player or players do you think fit that make this team better next year around the core, those are the two names I'm going to bring up.
And those are great names. And Siakam's due to make $37.8 million. Anunoby 18.6. So you'd have to throw in something else, but maybe you could. Maybe you could throw in Thaddeus Young or Chris Boucher or something like that, and maybe Otto Porter's expiring, something like that, and it could be stomachable. That's interesting too, because I mean, Siakam has been rumored to come to the Warriors. There's a lot of people that have speculated about OG Anunoby.
Yep.
That he would be a nice wing for the Warriors to have, a two-way wing. And his price is reasonable, 17.3 this year, 18.6 next year. Then he's got a player option, I believe, in 24-25, looks like for 19.9. So that's reasonable. And Siakam is signed through 23-24 at 37.8, and then he becomes a free agent.
He's got 1 year left.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty expensive deal. So this is what just went up on our station Twitter feed. 888-957-9570. Dub Nation, are you emotionally prepared to part ways with Klay Thompson? Yes or no? How would you answer that?
For me, I am, because I really think that Klay is a guy that is not going to handle the twilight years well. And then I think everybody's going to be tiptoeing around. And I don't know how you can get younger, and I think you do need to get a little younger, if you're going to keep all three of these guys and go to the finish line. This was always kind of the debate. Do the Warriors go to the finish line with all three of their stars, or is it two out of the three? You knew Steph was going to go they're going to the finish line with Steph.
Sure.
I think a lot of people assumed that they maybe wouldn't go to the finish line with Draymond, but then you watch the way that Draymond and Steph play off of one another. How do you'd be foolish to separate that? I mean, those guys are absolutely they're so in lockstep on the floor with how they play off one another. There's no way I'm moving Draymond Green.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I've been a proponent of Draymond being on this team and a new 3-year deal, $70 million, whatever it takes. I don't necessarily know. Opt out, new 3-year deal. I think that's my guess on how it's going to go with him. I don't disagree with anything you said there, but I know that Klay Thompson, just because he's a shooter, a gunner, a finisher, I think his chemistry with those two guys is pretty good as well. Warrior basketball is beautiful when it's at its best, and he's a part of that too. He's absolutely a part of that too in terms of being a spot where the ball ends up a lot. And I think he had a better year than people are giving him credit for. And my answer is no. I'm just not. I
don't want to move him for Bradley Beal, but I could move him.
I'm not going to grab a Sharpie.
They're not getting Anthony Davis. I would just throw out in a situation where even if you got a deal that 99.9% of Warrior fans was a win deal for the Warriors, I still think there'd be people, because of how much they love Klay Thompson, that wouldn't be happy with it, even if the Warriors got the better end of the deal.
Yeah, I'm just again, without saying that, in ink, heels dug in, the Warriors are not allowed to trade Klay Thompson. I'm pretty close. Because I just don't even see the deal out there that would feel good. And again, you do that, my gosh, it better be amazing. It better be amazing, or it is scrambled egg all over your face.
Well, and then if you're
too much there,
if you want to make a significant move this offseason, I mean, I don't think you can just roll this thing back, pick somebody at 19 and be like, all right, here we go.
Agreed.
So that means
I am a proponent.
That's why I think you're going to see the Kuminga rumors continue, because I think that Kuminga is a coveted player.
Agreed.
That other teams around the league are looking at him going, oh my goodness, Kerr could have played this guy more. This guy's potential's through the roof. He's under contract for 5.7 this year, $6 million next year, 7.6 team option in 2024-25. And then a qualifying offer at $8 million. I mean, so he's incredibly reasonable, or $10 million qualifying offer in 25-26. Right. So, I mean, his price tag's totally reasonable. I bet you there's 25 teams in the league that could come up with an idea of, hey, Jonathan Kuminga.
Well, but that's on the table, but so is Poole. And I'm a proponent of Jordan Poole being traded, and I do think that there is a possibility that they are packaged. Because you're right. I think everybody will want Kuminga. I do think some people will raise their eyebrows about Jordan Poole. That's why you package them, right? That's why you package them. If you got hesitations about Jordan Poole, well, what if Kuminga was in the deal as well? I'm absolutely open to that, much more than any other name on the roster. Let's go to Jerry in San Francisco. You're on with Willard and Larry Krueger. Hey, Jerry, what are you doing?
Hey, not too much, man. Not too much. Hey, I wasn't living in the Bay Area yet. Just a couple years after, but curious how this would relate to when the Warriors traded Mitch Richmond in that trade.
That was
for Billy Owens back in the early '90s.
That was the eve. Right. That was the first opening night, I believe. They moved Mitch Richmond to Sacramento for Billy Owens, who had been holding out at that point from the Kings. That's when, remember, we used to have holdouts all the time. That was just the Warriors desperate to get bigger. And Nelly made a terrible decision there. I mean, Nelly moved a future Hall of Famer for a 6'9" guy with a lot of talent, but and Billy Owens was a very good Warrior, but wasn't Mitch Richmond. And Mitch was went to Sacramento. He was crushed, and then he went there and played incredible basketball, and eventually they flipped him for Weber.
Yep. Yeah, it was the exact deal, 91-92 year. Billy Owens comes to the Warriors in exchange for Richmond, center Les Jepsen, and a future second-round draft pick.
Who are you?
That was the deal.
And Billy Owens was great. I mean, as far as...
he wasn't great.
Well, I mean, he was terrific as talent. I mean, he could pull the ball off the rim. He had unbelievable handle for a 6'9" guy. I mean, he had a lot of talent. It wasn't like Billy Owens. Billy Owens was one of the best high school players in the state of Pennsylvania. He went to Syracuse, was a terrific player at Syracuse, but he didn't have a perimeter shot, and it didn't ever come around.
Do you know what's interesting about this idea? And again, we're asking you, Dub Nation, are you emotionally prepared for the idea of moving on from Klay Thompson? We'll take your calls, 888-957-9570, and I'll also hold up the word to the Twitch and YouTube audience again one more time here within the next 15 minutes. We'll promise that. But the funny thing is usually in the NBA, when you get rid of someone like this, again, if you're the Wizards and you're like, we want to get out from underneath Bradley Beal, all right, what are you probably going to get? Because everybody knows you need to get rid of him, so the value is down. What are you probably going to get? You're not going to get a great player in return. You're going to get an expiring deal. so that you can take all that money and be ready to either go out on the free agent market in the future or pour that into a number of players and get ready for the draft. That's what you'd want when you have an aging veteran making too much money. So do you know who the Warriors would want for Klay Thompson if they got rid of him? They would want Klay Thompson. That's exactly what they would want. I don't know about the next 3 years, but I'm willing to, let's do Klay one more year, and then let's see where we're at. Let's see how he plays. Let's see what the Warriors do. I get your point. You made it earlier that puts a lot of pressure on Klay. If he's going into the final year of his deal with no extension, he may not like that, but also tough cookies. I want to see how this goes and whether or not Klay is actually declining at the level that so many think that he is. Because I still think that they can win basketball games this year, but I'm also a big fan of the Warriors gaining some flexibility that they're telling us they need. And
they wouldn't in this deal.
Correct. That's why I hate the Bradley Beal idea.
Yeah.
And I don't know who you're going to get back, whose money's going to come off the books any quicker than Klay.
And they don't have the kinds of pieces on their roster that would intrigue you. Who's a good young player on the Wizards that they could throw you that would make it intriguing? And they don't have that player. Denny Avdia? Come on, seriously, what are we talking about here?
Right.
And so it would have to be, to me, if I was going to make that trade, I'm getting multiple number ones. I'm not giving you financial relief. You're going to owe Bradley Beal $160 million.
Yep.
$160 million between the 2024-25 season and the 2026-27 season. $150 million. If I'm taking $150 million and killing my flexibility cap-wise, and of course, this is going to make the Joe Lacob tax, the repeater tax, it's going to soar. It's going to this move would make them just a ridiculous $500 million price tag roster. I got to have something that I'm getting on the back end of this. I guess I would only really consider this move if I got 2 or 3 number ones, unprotected number ones.
Yeah,
otherwise,
I don't even know.
It makes no sense. That makes no sense.
The only name on the roster that would be somewhat interesting to people would be Kyle Kuzma. He's 27. He makes $13 million a year. That interests you at all?
Where's his head? Is he,
I think it's on top of his body.
I know.
That's the last time I saw him.
He's got a player option for this year, so he would have to sign in on that player option first, right? He'd have to opt in. We probably will. He's got a player option for $13 million, right? Is he going to opt in or opt out?
I don't know.
Probably,
I don't know.
I would guess he opts in, but maybe not.
I don't know.
If he opted in?
Yeah, he averaged over 20 a game this year. That tells me he's worth more than $13 million a year.
And then what are you going to have to do to make it match? You're going to have to give them Kuminga and Moody?
Well, no. Poole. I don't. To me, Poole.
But that still
Poole is
doesn't work
involved
out.
in this deal. If you ask me, but I don't like the deal. As I already said.
Do you like Porzingis?
I don't hate him.
Would you make that? Would you make the Beal Porzingis for Klay
Good
and Poole?
Lord, you're bringing in almost $100 million.
See, I wouldn't. And
with these two players.
Even in that deal, I need picks.
I'm sure that could be. You know what I mean?
If you gave me multiple unprotected number ones on a horrendous Wizards team, and I've got a way to get better in addition to Porzingis and Beal, I would consider it. But I don't love it because you're getting smaller and in the backcourt. I don't think Beal is like Poole. I think Poole can play on the ball. I think Beal's an off the ball guy.